Not eligible, they said. Not approved. But Amanda Bennett didn't stop. In her quiet Montana farmhouse surrounded by stacks of rejection letters and VA forms, she kept fighting for her grandson Elijah and for the promise her late son made before his final deployment. She made calls, sent letters, drove hours to government offices where no one looked her in the eye. Each answer was the same no. Then one rainy morning, as her hope was wearing thin, a black SUV pulled into her driveway. A man stepped out tall, older, in full uniform. He didn't speak at first, just removed his hat and looked her straight in the eye. "Mrs. Bennett," he said quietly, "I'm here to make it right." And in that moment, everything began to change. In the wide-open stillness of rural Montana, where wind moves slow through the hayfields and life hums in quiet patterns, Amanda Bennett lived a life shaped by loss, but driven by love. At 67, her days no longer moved in time with the seasons. Instead, they were measured by paperwork, phone calls, and a quiet boy named Elijah. Her grandson had come to live with her when he was just 5 years old after the knock on the door no military family ever wants to hear. Her only child, Sergeant Daniel Bennett, had been killed by an IED while leading a convoy outside Fallujah. He was 32, a single father, and a man who never left for deployment without kissing Elijah's forehead and whispering, "You're my mission now." Amanda never forgot those words. She repeated them often, sometimes out loud, sometimes just in her chest when the world grew heavy. Every morning before the coffee pot sputtered to life, she'd walk to the living room mantel and place her hand gently on the triangular case holding Daniel's flag. Next to it sat his dog tags, a faded photograph of him in uniform, and a leather-bound journal, the one he started writing after Elijah was born. She read it often, not just to remember him, but to feel the conviction in his words. "If anything happens to me," one entry read, "promise me you'll fight for him. I can't be there, but I need to know he'll be seen." And so Amanda fought. Her days were quiet, but far from idle. Elijah was 19 now, tall, gentle, and thoughtful in his silences. Diagnosed with autism at a young age, he rarely made eye contact, and he preferred order to noise, stillness to attention. But inside him was a spark, a fascination with mechanical things. He could take apart a radio fix, a tractor starter, or spend hours drawing the engines of planes he'd never been in. His dream, though he couldn't always say it out loud, was to work on aircraft, maybe even build one from scratch. There was a program in Montana, a specialized track at a technical college built for neurodivergent students. It was the kind of place where someone like Elijah could thrive. Amanda had done her research. The college was approved by the VA. The tuition could be fully covered by Daniel's GI Bill, except because the specific program for autistic students wasn't listed separately in the database, the VA refused to recognize it. They said, "Not eligible." Amanda heard those words again and again, but still she got up every day with one goal: to secure Elijah's place in that school. Because for her, it wasn't about policy. It was about keeping the promise her son made with his final breath. And out there in the vast quiet of Montana, she began a battle no one else could see, but one that mattered more than anything in the world. Amanda Bennett had always believed that if she followed the rules, showed up prepared, and spoke with kindness, people would listen. But inside the walls of the Veterans Affairs system, kindness was often met with silence, and preparation didn't guarantee progress. After months of research and sleepless nights, she filed the paperwork to transfer her late son's GI Bill benefits to her grandson Elijah. It was supposed to be a simple process. The college in Billings, Montana had just launched a specialized neurodivergent learning track designed for young adults like Elijah, those with autism who thrived with structure, visual instruction, and hands-on training. Amanda believed in it. She'd toured the classrooms, met the instructors, and even watched Elijah smile, truly smile, when he saw the aircraft engine mock-up in the lab. He hadn't smiled like that in years. But when she submitted the forms, they vanished into a void. Weeks passed with no reply. She called the VA hotline only to wait on hold for an hour before being transferred to someone else, then disconnected. She sent follow-up emails, double-checked her documentation, and highlighted the exact clause in the GI Bill that supported non-traditional programs. Still nothing. When she finally drove the 2 hours to the regional VA office, she walked in with a manila folder so packed with paperwork it looked like a legal brief. She sat down across from a young man in a sharp shirt and tie, who barely looked old enough to remember the Iraq War. He flipped through her documents with the slow efficiency of someone working a job not serving a mission. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, not meeting her eyes. "This specific program isn't currently on the approved list. You'll need to file a supplemental request." Amanda clenched her hands in her lap. "I already did that twice." He nodded like he'd heard that before. "Well, the system can take a while to catch up." So she came back. Twice more. Each time she brought updates, new letters from doctors' endorsements from the college's disability services director, even a handwritten note from Elijah himself, carefully printed in block letters, "I want to go to school here. Please help me." No one seemed to read it. The third visit ended the same way as the first. She sat in the parking lot afterward, staring at the steering wheel, feeling like a soldier returning from battle with nothing to show but bruises. Amanda's story isn't rare. Across the country, families of fallen or injured veterans wrestle daily with the maze of VA red tape. The forms Form 22-1990, 22-1995, 21-4138. Each one sounds like a transmission code, not a lifeline. The language is clinical, the responses are robotic, and behind every form is a person, usually someone already carrying the weight of grief, stress, or service-related trauma. I once spoke to a Marine Corps widow in Arizona who waited 16 months to get her son's tuition covered, only to be told the paperwork had expired. Another veteran in North Carolina had to prove twice that he was amputated before receiving proper accommodations. These aren't just mistakes, they're systemic failures. And they're draining. For someone like Amanda, every unanswered call felt like a betrayal, not just of her, but of Daniel's sacrifice. Her son died in uniform, believing his service would protect his child's future. What good is a folded flag if the country can't follow through? Amanda started keeping a notebook. Not a journal, but a log. Every call, every submission, every hold time. It read like a campaign diary. Called 1:10 p.m., transferred twice, no answer. Left message for regional director, no reply. Faxed form 1995, again added cover letter. At night, she spread the forms across her dining table like maps. Her hands trembled, but she kept going. Because these weren't just bureaucratic steps, they were trenches. And Amanda Bennett had learned far too young that sometimes the hardest battles don't happen overseas. They happen in silence, in offices, on phone lines. And you fight them not with rifles, but with resilience. Amanda Bennett had always known her grandson Elijah saw the world differently. He didn't say much, rarely made eye contact. He hummed when he was overwhelmed and sometimes flinched at the sound of sudden voices. But Amanda didn't need words to understand what moved him, because every time a plane passed overhead, his eyes followed it like a compass. There was something in the sound, the rhythm, the engineering of it all that made sense to him in a way people often didn't. On weekends, Amanda would drive him to the edge of the old county airfield. There they'd sit on the hood of her rusted pickup truck, watching twin-prop trainers and aging cargo planes climb into the sky. Elijah never spoke, but his fingers tapped the rhythm of the engines. And every now and then, he smiled. That's when Amanda knew this wasn't just a fascination. It was a calling. He wanted to become an aviation mechanic. He wanted to fix things, understand them, bring them back to life. The college in Billings had a program that combined mechanical training with autism-centered support services. It was the perfect match. So Amanda wrote. She wrote to the VA regional office, the director of education, benefits, the Office of Special Claims. She mailed letters, sent emails, printed medical documentation, and even recorded a video plea explaining Elijah's case, sitting at her dining room table with a folded flag in the background and a voice that trembled only once. Each rejection hit her like a wave. The letters were polite, impersonal, full of procedural language. Program not currently approved for post-9/11 GI Bill funding. Insufficient documentation for supplemental review. Pending further clarification. Every envelope she opened felt like a fresh insult to her son's memory. She kept each letter in a binder labeled Daniel's Promise, because that's what this was about, keeping the vow her son had made. Amanda could still remember the last phone call she had with Daniel. He was stationed near Mosul, the line filled with static. He sounded tired but determined. "If anything happens to me," he'd said, his voice quiet and firm, "don't let them forget Elijah. Promise me, Mom. He needs someone to fight for him." "I promise," she had whispered. Now that promise lived in every word she wrote, every form she filed, every appeal she made. Amanda might have been 67, but she still had a warrior's heart and the blood of one in her veins, and she wasn't done fighting. It was a chilly morning in early spring when Amanda Bennett and Elijah made the drive to Billings. The road curved through valleys, still brushed with the last breath of winter, but the sky above was a clear Montana blue. The kind Daniel used to say reminded him of home. Amanda drove in silence, her hand occasionally reaching out to rest over Elijah's, as he tapped his fingers gently on the window glass in rhythm with a tune only he knew. The technical college campus wasn't large, but it had a sense of quiet dignity. Brick buildings framed by pine trees, a modest quad with benches and student art displays, and a breeze that carried the scent of freshly cut grass. It didn't feel cold or clinical, it felt personal, real, like a place someone could belong. Amanda parked beneath a maple tree just beginning to bud. "We're here," she said softly. Elijah looked at the building, then back at her, eyes wide but calm. He didn't say anything, he rarely did, but he followed her without hesitation. Inside, they were greeted by a young woman in her late 20s. Her name was Carly, and she wore a sunflower-patterned scarf and a smile that reached her eyes. "You must be Elijah," she said warmly, crouching slightly to meet him at eye level. "I've heard so many good things." Elijah shifted on his feet but didn't retreat. Amanda felt a flicker of hope. Carly led them down a quiet hallway, pointing out student support offices, break lounges, and calming spaces. Then she opened a door to a softly lit room with pale blue walls, weighted blankets, fidget tools, soft beanbag chairs, and noise-reducing headphones neatly hung on a peg. "This is our sensory room," she explained, "a space for students to decompress, regulate, or just breathe." Elijah stepped inside and paused. He walked slowly around the room, running his hand over the edge of a sound panel, then sat gently in one of the bean bags. His shoulders lowered just slightly. Amanda watched, her eyes misting. "This place was designed with students like him in mind," Carly said. "But I'll be honest, we still fight to get federal funding for programs like this. Most don't even exist without grants or donations. Special needs education, especially post-secondary, isn't something Washington prioritizes." Amanda nodded slowly, absorbing every word. That was the problem, wasn't it? Elijah wasn't invisible. He just lived in a system that refused to see him. But in this space, something was different. It wasn't just the walls or the soft light, it was the fact that people here had clearly thought about kids like Elijah. And that made all the difference. By the time they left, Elijah had traced his fingers over a model airplane in the campus tech lab, his lips curled in a faint smile. Amanda tucked that image deep in her heart. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was begging for scraps. She felt like maybe, just maybe, they belonged. The letter arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, tucked inside a bland government envelope that had no business carrying the weight it did. Amanda Bennett had learned to spot them instantly: the heavy stock paper, the formal seal, the flat language that tried to dress up disappointment as procedure. She opened it at the kitchen table, her hands already trembling. The words were painfully familiar. "Dear Mrs. Bennett, thank you for your continued interest. At this time, the requested program is not yet approved for GI Bill transfer eligibility." She didn't finish reading. She didn't need to. It was her fourth rejection in 6 months. Amanda didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just folded the letter carefully, placed it in the Daniel's Promise binder with the others, and walked into the living room. The sun was just beginning to set over the snowy tips of the pines outside, casting a golden hue over the floorboards. She lit a fire the way Daniel used to when he was home on leave. The scent of pine wood filled the room. Then she took down the journal. Daniel had started it shortly after Elijah was born. It was filled with messy handwriting, grease stains, notes from the field, and sketches of Elijah's first toy helicopter. Amanda flipped through the pages slowly until she reached the one she always stopped at, the page written just days before his final deployment to Iraq. "If anything happens to me, promise me he won't be invisible." That sentence stared back at her like a challenge. Not just a wish, but an order. A mission. Amanda sat there for a long while, the fire crackling, Elijah humming softly in the next room as he rearranged a row of tiny model engines on the coffee table. And then she stood up, opened her old laptop, and began to write. "To whom it may concern. My name is Amanda Bennett. I'm the mother of Sergeant Daniel Bennett, who was killed in Iraq. I am also the grandmother and guardian of his son, Elijah, a brilliant autistic young man who wants to study aircraft mechanics. We have been denied GI Bill benefits because the program that best fits his needs hasn't yet been added to a list. Daniel gave everything for this country. His last wish was that his son not be forgotten, that he not be left behind because he doesn't fit into a traditional mold. I'm reaching out because I have nowhere else to go. And I believe someone somewhere still listens. Please help us. Help him. Respectfully, Amanda Bennett. She didn't stop there. Amanda searched through old contacts Daniel had left in a weathered notebook, names he'd scribbled alongside call signs and unit codes. One stood out: General Marcus Hale Rhett, a man Daniel had once described as the kind of leader who still gives a damn. She added his email to the list. Then, with shaking hands and a steady heart, Amanda pressed send. And for the first time in months, she felt like the silence might finally break. The thunder rolled low and steady over the Montana hills that evening, like distant artillery echoing across the past. Rain splattered against the kitchen windows in erratic bursts, matching the storm brewing in Amanda Bennett's chest. She stood at the sink, drying a plate with slow, methodical movements when headlights cut through the downpour and swept across the living room wall. She froze. Most visitors didn't drive in weather like this, and no one ever pulled up in a black SUV with tinted windows on her gravel road. Elijah sat cross-legged on the floor, focused on reassembling a small engine toy. He didn't seem to notice the tension that filled the room as Amanda stepped toward the door. A tall man emerged from the vehicle. Even through the rain, Amanda could make out the sharp crease of a military coat, the unmistakable silhouette of authority. He moved with slow, deliberate steps, like someone who'd marched through war zones and funeral processions alike. She opened the door cautiously. Rain misted in behind him. He removed his hat, tucking it under one arm. "Mrs. Bennett," he asked, his voice deep and calm. "I'm General Marcus Hale. I received your email." Amanda's mouth parted in surprise, but no sound came out. She simply stepped aside, her hands shaking slightly as she motioned for him to enter. The warmth of the fire met them as they stepped into the living room. The general stood for a moment, taking in the photographs on the mantel. Daniel in uniform, Elijah as a toddler on his father's shoulders, the folded flag beneath a glass case. He nodded once, silently, respectfully. Amanda gestured toward the kitchen table. "Please, have a seat," she said, her voice thin. He sat down with the careful composure of someone used to gravity. Amanda sat across from him, her fingers twisting the corner of a napkin. Then she began to speak. She told him everything. About Elijah, about Daniel, about the promise, the college, the VA, the endless runaround. She spoke slowly at first, haltingly, then with the sharp, tired rhythm of someone who had carried too much alone for too long. General Hale never interrupted, not once. He didn't ask for forms. He didn't ask her to repeat herself. When she finished, the silence hung for a beat. Then he pulled a slim black phone from his coat pocket, scrolled briefly, and placed a call. "This is General Hale. Get me the Director of Program Approvals." A pause. "No, I don't care if it's after hours. This can't wait." Amanda stared, stunned. "You're going to approve the Elijah Bennett case effective immediately. No more delays, no more excuses." Another pause. "Then this isn't a request. It's an order." He ended the call with a firm press of his thumb. Then he looked at Amanda with soft, steady eyes. "Sometimes," he said, "the system forgets who it's supposed to serve. I haven't." And just like that, something shifted. The storm outside hadn't stopped. But inside Amanda's chest, for the first time in months, the thunder began to clear. It happened faster than anyone expected. 48 hours after General Hale left Amanda's home, a letter arrived, not the usual VA envelope, but one printed on crisp official stationery and hand-delivered by certified mail. "Dear Mrs. Bennett, your request has been reviewed and approved under executive authority. Elijah Bennett's enrollment in the neuroaeronautics program at Billings Technical College is fully authorized under post-9/11 GI Bill coverage, effective immediately." Amanda read the letter 3 times before letting herself believe it. Later that same day, her phone rang. It was Carly from the college. Her voice trembled. "Amanda, we got the confirmation. The VA called us directly. We've never seen anything like this before. There was laughter on the other end of the line, half disbelief, half relief. They didn't just approve the program, they flagged it for permanent listing on the Federal Registrar. Amanda, your fight didn't just open the door for Elijah, it's going to help dozens of other students like him. Amanda didn't say much. Her eyes were already full of tears. That weekend, she and Elijah drove back to the college not for a tour but to enroll. The campus looked different this time. The sky was a brighter blue. The wind felt warmer. Or maybe it was Amanda herself who had changed, finally breathing, without the crushing weight of red tape on her chest. They walked through the now familiar halls, past smiling staff members and students milling around. Carly met them at the front desk with a hug that Amanda didn't know she needed. They headed into the tech lab, a wide, bright space filled with tools, engines, and possibilities. Elijah walked slowly, his eyes darting from workbenches to turbines to overhead lights. Then, as if pulled by instinct, he walked over to an old aircraft frame propped on a service stand. He reached out and gently touched the cold metal, his fingers tracing the rivets, the curve of the wing. He didn't say anything, but Amanda saw it. A smile. Small at first, then blooming with pride. It wasn't just a smile of interest, it was ownership, belonging. And in that moment, Amanda Bennett knew her son's promise had not only been honored, it had come to life. 1 month later, beneath a bright Montana sky, folding chairs lined the college green as flags fluttered in the gentle breeze. Faculty, students, and veterans gathered together under a large white canopy to mark the launch of something rare, something built on persistence, heart, and legacy. The neuroaeronautics program, once a quiet pilot project few had noticed, now bore a new name, the Daniel Bennett Initiative. Amanda stood near the front holding a framed photo of her son in full uniform. His eyes were steady in the image, a quiet confidence in his posture that mirrored the strength she felt pulsing in her chest. Beside her stood Elijah, dressed in a navy button-down shirt and khakis, his fingers gently tapping the program pamphlet he held. His gaze was calm, his shoulders no longer tense. The college director stepped to the microphone first, her voice firm but full of emotion. Today, she began, we don't just celebrate a new academic pathway. We honor a family's unshakable resolve. We recognize a mother's battle, a veteran's sacrifice, and a young man's potential. And above all, we recognize that no one should be invisible in a system they served. Then came the director of Veteran Affairs, flown in personally for the occasion. This program stands as proof that bureaucracy doesn't always win, that when people speak up, when they demand fairness and dignity, we listen, and sometimes we change. Finally, General Hale stepped forward. He wore his full uniform, the silver stars on his shoulder gleaming in the midday sun. He didn't read from a script. This, he said, his voice calm and unwavering, is about promises kept across generations. Daniel Bennett kept his promise to this country. Amanda Bennett kept her promise to her son. And now we keep our promise to Elijah. Amanda felt the tears come, but she didn't brush them away. She squeezed Elijah's hand and held Daniel's picture a little closer. Because in that moment, surrounded by applause, by gratitude, by change, she knew something had shifted forever. This wasn't the end of a fight. It was the beginning of a legacy. Long after the chairs had been folded and the applause had faded into memory, the real impact of Amanda Bennett's fight continued to ripple through quiet towns and unseen households. It wasn't just about one approval or even one young man finally stepping into his future. It was about what happens when ordinary people refuse to be dismissed, when someone who has every reason to give up chooses instead to keep showing up. Amanda had never called herself brave, but resilience lives in the small daily acts, the letters sent, the phone calls made, the forms filled out again and again, despite exhaustion. That kind of persistence doesn't make headlines, but it changes lives. And Amanda's story wasn't isolated. According to a 2024 report from the VA's Office of Inspector General, over 28% of GI Bill claims involving dependents are delayed due to bureaucratic processing errors or misclassification. Thousands of families are caught in limbo. Widows, single parents, caregivers, waiting for benefits their loved ones already earned. Amanda decided to do something about it. She began writing to local newspapers sharing her experience, not to seek recognition, but to provide a roadmap for others walking the same path. Her first op-ed in the Billings Gazette, titled "Paperwork Shouldn't Bury a Promise," was picked up by 3 regional publications. Soon, emails began arriving from families across the country. "Your words gave me the courage to start again. I thought I was the only one. Amanda began collecting resources, creating a guide to help other veterans' families navigate the VA system more efficiently. She worked with Carly and General Hale to advocate for legislative adjustments, minor policy shifts that would make it easier for non-traditional programs to be added to the approved GI Bill list. Because in the end, Amanda understood something many overlook. Quiet heroism isn't about medals or ceremonies. It's about not quitting, not letting bureaucracy erase someone's worth, and not letting a folded flag become a forgotten promise. Her battle had become a beacon for those too tired to speak and those still trying to be heard. And the system for once had listened. The spring sun bathed the campus in warm golden light as Amanda stood quietly outside the classroom window, her hands gently folded in front of her. Inside, Elijah sat at a workbench with three other students. His eyes focused, his hands steady, as he helped reassemble the core of a small aircraft engine. Amanda didn't hear what they were laughing about, only that they were. A light, easy kind of laughter that came from being comfortable, from being seen, from belonging. She leaned slightly closer to the window, her breath catching, as Elijah turned and smiled genuinely at the classmate beside him. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rare. It was real. The American flag on the building's roof fluttered gently in the breeze above them. It cast a striped shadow along the brick wall, stretching toward the very room where Elijah now thrived. Amanda placed her hand over her heart, not in salute, but in something quieter, something deeper. "You kept your word, Daniel," she whispered, "and I kept mine." Her voice was soft but certain, not broken, not grieving, just full. She stepped away from the window, taking one last look at the life that had taken root, hard-earned, tender, and true. And as she turned to leave, Elijah laughed again. Not because someone told him to, not out of nervous habit, but because in that moment he was exactly where he was meant to be. And that was enough. Fade out. In a world that moves faster than many of us can keep up with, Amanda Bennett's story reminds us of something timeless. Promises still matter, especially the quiet ones made at kitchen tables, whispered between generations, and written in journals meant for no one but the heart. Her journey wasn't just about Elijah or a college program. It was about how systems often forget the people they were built to serve. It was about how persistence, even in the smallest acts, can move mountains, if not for us, then for those we love. This story speaks to a deeper truth, familiar to many older Americans. We've seen change. We've fought for it, and we know it doesn't come easy. Whether you're a veteran, a parent, a grandparent, or simply someone who has felt invisible in a system built on red tape, this story was for you. Today, families like Amanda's still face walls of paperwork, long hold times, and outdated policies. But maybe your voice or your story can be the spark that shifts something, because sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to back down. We want to hear from you. Have you or someone you love ever had to fight a silent battle like Amanda's? Do you think the way we treat veteran families today reflects the promises we made yesterday? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's start the conversation. And if this story moved you, helped you remember something, or gave you hope, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. We tell real stories that honor sacrifice, resilience, and quiet acts of American courage. Thank you for being part of this journey. And remember, some of the greatest victories don't come with parades. They come when someone simply refuses to give up. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and stay grateful.